well-prepared DAs with well-prepared and clearly rehearsed speeches and exhibits and a lot of theatrics. Frankly, not the judge. You and you alone have the power. You and you alone decide what is truth and what isn't truth.
When Darrell Brooks Jr. addresses the jury and talks about them having the power and talks about them knowing what is truth from what is not truth, he never misses an opportunity, don't know if you noticed that or not, to attack prosecution team, particularly, in my opinion, Sue Opper, and also attack the judge. How's it going, everyone? You're watching Sight Sounds Flavors on YouTube, sightsoundsflavors.com. If at any point in time you like the video, smash that like button. Please subscribe to the channel, ring the bell for notifications so you won't miss a single video. And also, please leave a comment down below. When he addresses the jury, he fails to realize that they've seen it all. His shirtless antics, stare downs, being insensitive to the witnesses, the victims, the survivors, rolling his eyes, mumbling under his breath, flipping people off, having to be dragged out of the courtroom. They've seen it all. And he probably doesn't appreciate the fact of how many times they probably got called into chambers only to be stopped right before coming in because of his disruptive behavior. How many times they had to leave because of his disruptive behavior. How many instructions they must have gotten from the judge, probably more so than any other jury, because of his disruptive behavior and what they could and couldn't deliberate on. What they couldn't look at, they couldn't listen to, they couldn't factor in. I mean, even jury nullification, Darrell Brooks Jr. was told, do not address the jury with that. And he did, time in and time again. Now, I don't know about you, but I can't unhear something. I can't unsee something. I can strive for that, but I would be a liar if I told you that subconsciously it wasn't there. But it's interesting how he addresses the jurors, and this is yet another example, in my opinion, of Darrell Brooks Jr. actually thinking, even at the 11th hour, when both sides basically rested, on some level he thought he could actually walk out a free man, exonerated of all charges. I mean, it's mind-boggling. I mean, we're using a Darrellism, but it is mind-boggling when you think about it, because, I mean, only an absolute lunatic would think that even one juror, I mean, I think he would be insane to think that even one juror would hang that jury because they were just so torn, because they were just so on the fence about whether or not the government proved the charges beyond a reasonable doubt. Based on his sovereign citizen mumbo jumbo, based on his abrasiveness, based on his just lack of any kind of conscience, any kind of accountability, any kind of empathy, is really mind-boggling to me. And it goes back to a point that I made on another video where I'm starting to suspect that he was putting on a show for the cameras. But then I go back and I say, no, I don't want to give him that much credit, because I don't think that he's that much of a performer, as much as he was probably that much desperate. Because after both sides rested their cases, and as they're giving their closing arguments, which this is an excerpt from, he had to know that the party was over. That this fiasco, this charade of a trial, not because of the state, not because of prosecution team or court workers, but because of his own antics, that this charade of a case was coming to an end. And he had to know that just in a few days he was going to be a resident of the government for the rest of his life. That he wasn't going to have this opportunity to grandstand at appeals or other cases. That this whole thing that he knew was over. He had to know that he was going to be found guilty. He had to know he was going to spend the rest of his life in prison. These little like glimmers of hope were few and far between and becoming less and less as the trial wrapped up. So I don't want to give him the credit of him being this, just gifted performer, because you have to be gifted to really believe that you're going to be able to walk out of there a free man. I mean, you got to be almost stupid, actually. But that stupidity is not even possible to be faked. I mean, you'd have to really, really get into role, like really get into character. Like these improvisational actors that can make themselves cry or laugh or go back and forth at a drop of a hat and be convincing. I don't think that I put Darrell Brooks in that category. I think that is, I just don't. Maybe you do. Again, that's the whole point of this. I don't do like these videos where you watch 3 hours of recycled content. I do 30 seconds, maximum 45 seconds. I don't even think I have clips that are a minute long. And then I talk about them. And people are like, you talk too much. I'm like, well, that's the nature of this channel. That's why every video there's one comment like that, and like 99% of the others actually engage in conversation, and I engage you guys in conversation. That's the whole point of this channel. But every so often we have somebody that comes in and they're like, well, why do you keep mentioning that Judge Darrell gets a 97? Well, I mention that because people will say that I'm a hater, and I'm not. I mention the fact that this is conversational because people may not understand, why is this guy talking for 8, 9, 10 minutes on a 30-second clip? But the reality of the matter, though, is that he does not miss a single opportunity to snub the prosecution, to snub the judge, to snub the process, to play the victim, to talk about theatrics, to talk about how unprepared he was, even though he fired 2 perfectly competent attorneys. He needs to play that victim role, whether or not it's going to help him get exonerated, less years, or just make himself feel good. He needs that. His ego needs it. But it's just crazy to me how he addressed the jury, like thinking that he really honestly could even convince one. I mean, in his mind, he probably thought he could convince them all. That's the nature of the narcissism. But in my opinion, if he even thought he could convince one after everything they'd seen and heard, is mind-boggling. But he played the role. And I just cannot credit him with putting that on as a role, faking it. Like, I think he truly believed it. I think he truly believed it. Maybe not 99% of them, but enough as to where he actually made those types of statements and exhibited that type of body language and carried on that charade that they had the power. What do you think?